These are the darkest parts of Olympic history, laid out in the form of an iceberg. We'll start with the strange and unsettling, but as we go deeper, things get disturbing. I made this iceberg with help from a few friends, and honestly, some of these stories are so dark, they'll change how you see the Olympics forever. Let's start at the tip of the iceberg, the cities that died for gold. Hosting the Olympics is seen as a global honor, but behind the fireworks, the medals, and the smiling mascots lies a trail of destroyed cities and broken people. When Athens hosted the 2004 Summer Olympics, it spent over $11 billion. At the time, the Greek government said it would revitalize the country. But after the closing ceremony, most stadiums were left to rot. Pools dried up, metal rusted, entire Olympic villages became modern ruins, and then came the financial collapse. Experts have directly linked Greece's 2008 debt crisis to its Olympic spending. A country that invented the Olympics was crippled by trying to host them. In Brazil, the story was worse. Rio 2016 forced over 77,000 people out of their homes. Favelas were flattened to build temporary arenas. Soldiers were sent in to clean up slums. Some were arrested, some disappeared. Today, those venues sit empty, slowly being swallowed by jungle vines. They called it the legacy of the Games. But in these cities, the legacy is just abandoned buildings and vanished promises. The first doping victims. We all know about the Russian doping scandals. But performance-enhancing drugs have always been part of the Olympics, even when they were legal. In the early 1900s, there were no banned substances. Athletes were handed mixtures of strychnine, heroin, amphetamines, and raw egg whites, sometimes during the event. In 1904, marathon runner Thomas Hicks nearly died after his trainers fed him a mix of brandy and rat poison mid-race. He hallucinated, collapsed, and had to be dragged across the finish line by his team. They declared him the winner anyway, but that was just the start. By the 1960s, steroid use had become widespread, especially in the Eastern Bloc, where winning Olympic medals was a state-sponsored mission. In East Germany, thousands of female athletes were unknowingly given anabolic steroids disguised as vitamins. Some grew facial hair, others suffered organ damage, many became infertile, some committed suicide in their 30s. The system called it support. But it was human experimentation, carried out under the Olympic torch. The athletes who returned to hell? Most Olympic athletes dream of returning home to celebration, but for some, going home was a death sentence. North Korean defectors have reported that athletes who underperformed at international events, including the Olympics, were imprisoned, beaten, or disappeared. One case involved the entire 1994 North Korean football team, who were allegedly sent to forced labor camps after losing 3-0 to South Korea. Weightlifter Park Hyun-suk, a gold medalist in 2008, won praise from the regime, but hasn't been seen since 2012. No public appearances, no records, no explanation, and it's not just North Korea. After the 1972 Munich Olympics, several Soviet athletes were punished for showing weakness during competition. Boxers and runners were reportedly detained, interrogated, and pressured to restore honor or lose everything. In these countries, losing at the Olympics isn't just failure, it's betrayal. And betrayal has a price: the Olympians who couldn't carry gold. When an athlete wins Olympic gold, we imagine glory, parades, and lifelong celebration. But for many, it's the beginning of something much darker. Jure Speedy Peterson, a U.S. aerial skier, won silver in 2010. He was known for his signature trick, the hurricane. But behind the scenes, Peterson battled alcohol, trauma, and depression. A year later, in 2011, he died by suicide with a single gunshot to the head. He was 29. Kelly Catlin, an Olympic cycling medalist, died in 2019. She was pursuing a graduate degree while training. Her suicide note mentioned how she felt trapped in a box with no air. There's even a term for it now: post-Olympic depression. Athletes go from global praise to complete silence, left with pain, pressure, and no path forward. Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympian of all time, once admitted, "I was the most famous swimmer in the world, and I wanted to die." The Olympic motto is Citius, Altius, Fortius, faster, higher, stronger. But sometimes the weight of the gold is what pulls them down. The doctor who abused a generation. His name was Larry Nassar, the longtime doctor for USA Gymnastics and the U.S. Olympic team. To the public, he was a respected professional. Behind closed doors, he was a predator. Over 500 women came forward, Olympic gold medalists. Children, teenagers, all of them told the same story. Nassar used his position to sexually abuse them under the guise of medical treatment. For years. What's worse, officials knew. Multiple gymnasts reported him to USA Gymnastics as early as 1997. Nothing happened. Complaints were ignored, silenced, or buried in paperwork. Even when Simone Biles spoke out, the organization tried to control the narrative. They sent her flowers. One of the survivors, Rachel Den Hollander, put it bluntly, "He's not the only monster in this story." Because while Nassar was the abuser, it was the Olympic system that protected him. The Russian doping machine. In 2014, the Winter Olympics were held in Sochi, Russia. The world watched as the Russian team dominated the games, breaking records and taking home 33 medals. Behind the scenes, something else was happening. Russian intelligence agents, including the FSB, the modern KGB, were running a state-sponsored doping program. Athletes' urine samples were being secretly swapped at night through a hidden hole in the testing lab wall. Clean samples were stored in freezers, dirty ones were flushed. The entire system was controlled by Russia's Ministry of Sport, in coordination with their anti-doping agency, and allegedly with the blessing of Vladimir Putin. When a whistleblower, Dr. Grigory Rodchenkov, fled to the U.S. and exposed everything, the story broke worldwide. Over 1,000 athletes were found to be involved. The punishment? Russia was briefly banned, then allowed back under a different name. Some athletes were still allowed to compete. The IOC quietly swept most of it under the rug. It wasn't just cheating. It was organized biological warfare on fair competition, funded and protected by a government. The coach who starved champions. In elite sports, pain is normalized, but for young girls in rhythmic gymnastics, pain was the plan. Irina Wiener, head coach of Russia's Olympic gymnastics program, was called a genius. She trained some of the best performers in history, including Alina Kabaeva, who later became linked to Putin himself. But her methods? Starvation diets starting at age 10, public humiliation for weight gain, forced training on broken bones, concussions, and fractures, athletes locked in training camps for months without family contact. In 2022, a former world champion gymnast, Alexandra Soldatova, attempted suicide after years under Wiener's system. She later revealed she had developed severe bulimia and panic attacks while training for Russia. Other athletes told stories of being denied food, water, or even rest. One girl collapsed from exhaustion and was told to get up and smile. In the sport's official documentary, Over the Limit, Wiener is heard screaming at her athletes, "You are fat, you are useless, you embarrass Russia." This isn't just tough coaching, it's state-sanctioned abuse, disguised as national pride. The Olympic blackmail tapes. In South Korea, figure skating is sacred, so when Kim Yoona became an Olympic gold medalist, she was seen as a national treasure. But behind the scenes, her victory triggered something darker. A secret power struggle broke out between Yoona's coach and the Korean Skating Union, a group with close ties to politics and money. Then came the blackmail. Leaked recordings revealed officials threatening to destroy careers unless skaters changed coaches. Bribes were demanded. Scores were manipulated. One skater, Lim Yoon-soo, was allegedly injured on purpose during warm-up at the 2019 World Championships by a rival skater, Maria Bell, who faced no penalty. Lim's team claimed it was retaliation for not cooperating with certain officials. Then came the deaths. Two rising Korean skaters died by suicide within 2 years. Choi Da-bin's brother, and a 19-year-old male skater, both tied to abusive coaching environments and extreme pressure. Journalists trying to investigate the Korean Skating Union were blacklisted. The corruption runs so deep, it's hard to tell where sport ends and where organized crime begins. The Munich Massacre. In 1972, the Olympics were supposed to represent peace. Hosted in West Germany, with smiling mascots and a kinder image after World War II. Then came the night of September 5th. A Palestinian terrorist group called Black September infiltrated the Olympic Village. They broke into the Israeli team's apartments and took 11 athletes hostage. What followed was a 21-hour standoff, televised across the world. It ended in blood. During a failed rescue operation at a nearby airbase, the terrorists opened fire. All 11 hostages were killed. Some were shot. Others were tortured and mutilated before execution. The games paused for just 1 day. Then, they continued, as if nothing happened. No memorial, no tribute, no justice. And worse, 3 of the surviving terrorists were captured, but later released in a shady deal after a hijacking. They returned to the Middle East and were celebrated as heroes. To this day, the IOC has refused to hold a moment of silence during Olympic ceremonies. The death slide at Whistler. The 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver were nearly derailed before they even began. On the morning of the opening ceremony, Nodar Kumaritashvili, a 21-year-old luge athlete from Georgia, prepared for a routine practice run at the Whistler Sliding Center, the fastest luge track in the world. He never made it to the finish line, traveling at 89.4 miles per hour. Nodar lost control and was violently thrown off the sled. He hit an exposed metal pole with such force, his helmet cracked in half. He died instantly. His teammates arrived seconds later to find his body covered in blood. The track had no safety barriers at that section, and it had already been flagged as dangerously fast by multiple teams. The IOC's response? They blamed Nodar for being inexperienced. Then they patched the wall with some extra padding and opened the track the next day. His funeral was broadcast live in Georgia. The Olympic opening ceremony played that same night without a single mention of his name. The mascot conspiracy, and the 2012 opening ritual. Most people remember the 2012 London Olympics for its fireworks, music, and weird industrial-themed dance show. But a closer look at the ceremony has sparked years of conspiracy theories, some of which feel disturbingly plausible. The ceremony featured giant hospital beds, with children writhing under white sheets, a towering Grim Reaper figure walking through the crowd, dancing doctors and nurses applauding as a virus spreads, and a stadium-wide light show forming the shape of a coronavirus-style spike. Remember, this was 8 years before the COVID-19 pandemic. Theories exploded online. Some believed it was a coincidence. Others claimed it was predictive programming. A ritualized display hiding in plain sight. The official mascot of the London Games, Wenlock, a one-eyed figure with surveillance cameras for eyes. Even mainstream outlets called it creepy and Orwellian. But the IOC shrugged it off, conspiracy or not. The symbolism was real and hard to unsee. The athlete who asked for asylum and vanished. Kristina Tsimanouskaya was a sprinter for Belarus at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, but she never got to run her race. After criticizing her coaches for mismanaging the team, Belarusian officials abruptly pulled her from the games, claiming mental instability. They tried to force her onto a plane back to Minsk. She refused. At the airport, she begged Japanese police for help. In a whisper, she said, "If I go back, I will be imprisoned," or worse. She was granted emergency asylum in Poland, under 24/7 armed protection. Her family fled Belarus days later, but her story isn't unique. In 2004, Iranian judoka Arash Miresmaili refused to fight an Israeli opponent under government pressure. He was hailed as a hero by Iran and given a bonus equal to gold prize money. Later reports suggested He was threatened with punishment if he competed. Several North Korean athletes who tried to defect during the Olympics have never been seen again. At the Olympics, medals aren't the only thing on the line. Sometimes, it's your life. That's the Olympics Iceberg. There's probably worse stuff out there we'll never hear about. And thanks for watching, guys. This was my first video, so I'd appreciate your feedback. Like the video if you enjoyed. Yeah, thanks again.